Hi guys, my name is Sherman and this is Sherman Spectrum, where we get to talk about LGBTQ content from around the world. And in today's video, we are taking a look at the 2019 film director's debut by Oliver Harmonis, which is called Moffie. Now, Moffie, for those of you who don't know what it is a South African derogatory slur similar to the word bag, which kind of is not something that you want to hear. It is very insulting to anybody in the LGBTQ community in South Africa. Like, many countries have their own certain words for slurs, like the N-word, all of these words that are used to dehumanize people. And Moffie is a film that not exposes, but shows light on what it was like to be gay in South Africa. And the film that we're going to be talking about is based on Carl van der Maver's book of the same title, which was published in 2006, which basically talks about the white South African regime in the 1980s, or basically 1981. And the book kind of explains Carl's very own, or Andre van der Maver. Andre Carl van der Maver. And the book basically explains his time in the South African Defense Force back in the 80s near the Angolan border, or what was known back then as the border wars, to fight communism or the black people problem. As this time South Africa was a very white predominant country and white people were in the regime. The white government controlled everything. There was segregation, which is basically known as the apartheid era or regime. And the film, which is one of the most gut-wrenching, silent but beautiful films, which really explores what it was like to be in South Africa at this time. Now, the film takes part in the South African Police Defense Force, where we get to meet Nicholas van der Maver, played by Kai Luke Brummer, who basically at the age, or over the age of 16, now has to go and serve his country for 2 years in the South African military. Now, this was quite common in most countries over the years, where you have to do your 2 years of compulsory military service. But in South Africa, this was a time of separation between black and white people, and any white South African needed to serve. But what was quite interesting, and from the point of the director, was that even though the film is loosely based on the book is more about Andre's love or sexual awakening to his sexual identity, where the film focuses on the brutality of being in the South African government or military service. And the book could be, or the film could be, quite triggering, whichever, depending on which one you use. It is quite triggering because we get to have this side-pointed view, or this point of view from Nicholas, who is basically playing the character from Andre, set in the 80s. So basically what happens throughout the beginning of the film, we get to see Nicholas's family, who is very proud that their son is about to serve in the South African military. And this is a time where a lot of indoctrination is happening. They're told that you either have got to be straight, white, and you basically have to be this male. There's a male bravado of what it means to be a straight white South African. And we get to see all of these young men, subjected to brutality. The word Moffie in this term, or in the film's term, is used to basically dehumanize, humiliate, and shame these men, as the term is kind of used for both straight and both gay men. It's basically something that no man wants to hear. And this doesn't necessarily mean that you are gay. So the term of this word is just used to show any man who does not fall under the typical masculinity, and this is kind of where we get to see how toxic masculinity is used to basically brainwash all of these young boys. And our main protagonist, Nicholas, while he throughout the film kind of realizes that he doesn't really agree or reside with any of these, of the white South African ideology. You know, they're basically going up against, or they're basically supporting everything that he is against. You know, he's more of somebody who wants to just stay home and listen to Sugar Man by Rodriguez rather than fight a war, you know, that he's not really interested in. And throughout the film, which is quite brutal, you kind of get to see this whole dehumanization of all of these soldiers. You know, they're humiliated, they're starved, you know, they're not giving any drinking water, and they're basically kind of taught to hate. You know, this isn't where we meet the Sergeant Barnard, or Barnard, who most of his role or his dialogue is just shouting and humiliating these boys. They're not really there to learn or to become better defense soldiers. They're there to hate. They're there to become emotionless, soulless beings, as it would make it more easier to kill rather than be sensitive. And it's throughout this experience, through in the book and in the film, we get to see how Nicholas van der Maver sexual awakening as he meets another gay recruit, which is played by Dylan Stassen, played by Ryan de Villiers. So in one particular scene, you know, they're forced to build trenches and basically have to sleep in the trench out in the cold while it's raining. And Dylan is the only one of the recruits that offers Nicholas a place to sleep in his sleeping bag. And this is the first scene where we get to see that how Stassen shows affection towards Nicholas. And this, to Nicholas, is something new and it's shocking. And you can kind of see the hesitant, or how hesitant he is when Dylan invites him over to his sleeping bag. And he's just like, no, it's okay. I'll just sit out here in the rain, in the cold, rather than just accept that act of kindness from another human being, as this would be seen as something, you know, too gay, you know, for another man to show another man affection. Now, of course, the affection that Stassen shows Nicholas is a little bit more than friendship, as he caresses his face and lets him know that, hey, it's okay. We're in a really crappy place right now, and we need to keep some form of our humanity than to become these soulless soldiers whose main task is just to kill. And throughout the film, we basically begin to see this relationship form between Nicholas and Dylan, or known as Stassen. Now, what's also interesting is that the film is primarily shot in the Western Cape of South Africa and is, you know, in Afrikaans. You know, it is an Afrikaans-based film, but anytime we get to see Nicholas having a conversation or Nicholas's dialogue, it is in English, as Nicholas is English. So also what's interesting in the film is that even though all of these boys are united, you know, under one umbrella of being white, you know, there is still this divide between English South Africans and Afrikaans South Africans, where the Afrikaans South Africans are more into rugby and being, you know, having this hyper masculine attitude and being super racist, as this is what it is to be in the South African apartheid regime, where Nicholas, like I said, is just really carefree, and he just does not want to be at war, because it was believed at this time that, or for this generation, that going to war would make you a proper man, and it would make you a proper white, straight South African man, because homophobia was, or homosexuality at this time, was literally a crime. And throughout the film, if you are discovered as gay, you are sent to Ward 22. Now, Ward 22 was probably the most scariest place on the military base, as this was a place where you were sent and you kind of were reconstructed, or you were pumped full of drugs in order to normalize or cure your homosexuality, or if you were a drug addict, or if you had any sort of mental problems. And there is a scene in the film while both of the boys are playing volleyball, you know, just to relax and have fun. One of the, let's say, Ward 22 victims basically escapes because he's being tortured, he's being drugged up. We don't really know what happens in Ward 22, but we do know that it's not fun to be in there. And one of the recruits just literally blows his head off, like right in front of everybody. And this is like such a shocking part for the film. So do kind of be warned when you're watching this. It is for mature audiences, as it's very brutal. And I think that was the whole entire point from the director, was just to show the brutality of it and how the motto of the film, or what the motto that all of the recruits had to go to, was that you need to show less emotion. No emotion means that you will survive. And when this scene happens, the camera quickly shifts to Nicholas' face, as obviously this is super traumatizing to anyone, to literally see someone kill themselves or to blow themselves up right in front of you is quite traumatizing. And the only way to deal with that is to show no emotion whatsoever. And this is basically what we get to see. And throughout the film, or right through the film, Dylan Stussen, the other boy that he has a secret crush on, has this really offensive attitude right from the beginning. He clearly makes it obvious that he does not want to be there, and every time he speaks to the sergeant, he's given attitude, and the sergeant really doesn't like this. So what happens on a time where both, let's say a weekend away, they're allowed to go home for one weekend. When Nicholas returns, Dylan Stussen is gone, he's missing, and he keeps asking questions, where is Stussen? Where is Stussen? He was here, where is he? And the sergeant just says that, quote in English, to forget about him, that he is a piece of crap and it's best to focus on the war and not on Dylan. And this is kind of where Nicholas gets the idea that Dylan might be in Ward 22. And he does eventually ask one of the other recruits, if Dylan is in Ward 22, and the other recruit says it doesn't really help whether you know the truth or not, as once he's in there, he's, it's terrible. And the only way to survive is just to pretend and to do anything that you can do to not go to Ward 22. And this is where we kind of get to see how the film is, instead of being faced on or focusing on Nicholas's sexuality, it's mostly focused on Nicholas trying to survive. He has to be here for 2 years, and in those 2 years he's just subjugated to brutality. And Nicholas showing interest in Dylan also kind of raises suspicions towards the sergeant, as he's also starting to doubt Nicholas's sexuality. Why would a straight white South African care about a gay person? Because here you're not here to be human, you're here to kill and hate. That is basically the main objective. And it's also kind of shown in the book, as Andre van der Merwe is trying to tell us, that most of the time at the South African Defense Force is really all about trying to survive and become a man, as this is seen as something that every South African or every white South African has to go through. So there are some scenes in the beginning of the film that are triggering, or would be triggering, as we get to see a bunch of these South African men, make fun of or humiliate a South African black man, as this was the thing, or the thing to do, the male bravado of proving that you are a strong South African male. And throughout the film, Nicholas does kind of bond with another recruit who also happens to be English. So as I mentioned, even though they're united under one umbrella as being white South African men, there was still a divide between English South Africans and British South Africans. And he kind of has a bond with another English South African, where they can talk about movies or music rather. They're bonding of wanting to be anywhere else but here. And this is going to be a very short video, because I would rather, even though I have given quite a lot of spoilers, I would rather have you watch this film, because it's really eye-opening and it really does expose the world of toxic masculinity and how it really traumatizes you as a person. So after Nicholas completes his 2-year service, he goes back home. He's considered, you know, a man. You've completed 2 years of South African service, and the first thing that he does is he tries to seek out Dylan, and he finds out that he's been released from Ward 22 and has been sent home, you know, as a dishonorable charge for, you know, probably being gay, and is basically kind of humiliated, because not does only this just affect you, but it also affects your family and your family's family. And the film tries to show little glimpses into Nicholas's past, how he's also almost traumatized. I think this probably would be like the early 70s or late 70s, where Nicholas and his family are at a swimming park. They're having a really great time. So he kind of goes to shower and is being called out by another man for having or looking at another man's private parts, and he defends himself saying that he wasn't doing this, he wasn't looking at the other man. So this is a clear sign of just how much hatred was placed on homosexuality at this time in South Africa and in the 80s, and how everything was just predominantly white. So if you basically did not hate anything, or if you did not share the ideology of white South Africa, if you showed any sympathy towards anyone black, then you were be considered, you know, like a traitor to your race, or you a Moffie. And that's kind of where the film comes in, because the word alone has so much power over South African males, and it was literally used to emasculate and dehumanize you and shame you. You know, you're not part of our culture, so you're a Moffie. And it stands out, and it really, you do kind of feel the emotion, even though there's so much emotionless, or there's not a lot of emotion throughout the film. And this is basically showed through Nicholas' part. You know, it's a very quiet, still film, because he is only trying to survive. All right, guys, thank you so much. This has been Sherman. This is Sherman Spectrum. And if you would like to see more content like this, please remember to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what do you think about toxic masculinity? Where do you stand on it? Perhaps you're someone who has known someone that has gone through this type of brutal hazing of what does it mean to be a man. So this is part 1 of the video. I will be releasing another video, which is will be dealing with another similar film with toxic masculinity, and look out for that video. It's going to be pretty cool. So I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.